Her name was removed from every monument. Her face was chiseled off every wall. Her tomb has never been found, because the people who buried her did not want it to be. 3,000 years later, one scan changed everything. And then someone made sure it didn't. There is a door inside a tomb that no government has officially acknowledged exists. It sits behind a decorated wall in the Valley of the Kings. A wall that, by every published survey, is simply a wall. Solid stone. Terminal. The end of a corridor that ends exactly where the maps say it ends. Egyptologists have walked past it for decades. Tourists have photographed it 10,000 times. It appears in every official diagram of the site. But in 2015, a British Egyptologist named Nicholas Reeves published something quietly extraordinary. He had been examining ultra-high-resolution scans of the interior walls of Tutankhamun's tomb, images so detailed they could resolve brushstroke patterns in the plaster, and he had found something the human eye, standing inside the chamber, could not see. Seems hidden beneath the painted surface. The outline of two sealed doorways. One of them, he argued, led to a storage chamber. The other led somewhere else entirely. The question was where? And who was buried behind it? The name Reeves put forward changed everything. Nefertiti. For most of recorded Egyptological history, Nefertiti has been a ghost. One of the most powerful queens in the ancient world, possibly a pharaoh herself, and yet her body has never been found. Her burial site is unknown. Her tomb, if it exists, has never been formally identified. She appears in inscriptions and reliefs with striking frequency during the reign of Akhenaten. Then she vanishes from the record entirely around 1336 BCE, just before the death of her husband. The official position, the comfortable textbook position, is that she simply disappeared. Records are incomplete. Egypt's political upheaval under Akhenaten erased or obscured enormous amounts of documentation. Her death was unrecorded or the records were destroyed. She was perhaps buried quietly, perhaps hidden deliberately, perhaps entombed somewhere that was never meant to be rediscovered. That was the accepted story. Tidy enough. Sad but tidy. It did not last. Reeves' paper moved through academic circles with unusual speed for a historical document. His argument was methodical and measured, not the work of a theorist reaching for sensation, but of a trained archaeologist reading physical evidence in a disciplined way. He pointed to the directional brushstrokes in the plaster. He noted that the decorated north wall of Tutankhamun's burial chamber showed anomalies in surface texture inconsistent with an uninterrupted plane of solid stone. He argued that the tomb of Tutankhamun, the most famous tomb in the world, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter, was not an original royal burial chamber at all. It was a reuse. The tomb Reeves proposed had been built for someone else. Someone buried there first. Tutankhamun, who died young and unexpectedly at around 18 years of age, was placed in a rush into the outer sections of a larger, pre-existing complex. The kind of complex befitting not a boy king who died before his time, but a senior royal, a queen, possibly a pharaoh who had been buried there in proper ceremony years before. And behind the sealed north wall, Reeves argued, lay the original burial. The original occupant. If you've been following ancient history and hidden discoveries like this one, subscribe. There is far more buried beneath the accepted version of the ancient world than most of us have been told. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities moved quickly after Reeves published. Some interpreted this as enthusiasm. Others, watching the pace of what followed, began to find the sequence of events more complicated. Two independent teams were given permission to conduct non-invasive radar surveys of Tutankhamun's tomb in 2015 and 2016. The first survey, conducted by a Japanese radar specialist named Hirokatsu Watanabe, reported, in initial findings, that there was indeed a void behind the north wall. A space. Something on the other side that was not solid rock. Organic materials were suggested in early analyses. The findings were announced with considerable fanfare by Egypt's then Antiquities Minister, Mamdouh el-Damadi, who described the probability of a hidden chamber as very high, and the likelihood of it being a significant discovery as extremely exciting. Then came the second survey. A team from the National Geographic Society, using different radar equipment, reached different conclusions. Their analysis found no evidence of voids behind the north wall. No cavities. No doorways. No chambers. The wall in their reading was simply a wall. Two sets of scientists. The same tomb. Opposite conclusions. That was not a technical disagreement. That was the beginning of a much larger problem. What happened next depends significantly on which account you follow, and there are several to choose from. The Egyptian government officially adopted the National Geographic findings. The case was declared by most institutional communications to be closed. There was no hidden chamber. Reeves had misread the data. The brushstroke anomalies were natural variations in ancient plastering technique. The apparent seams were not seams. But Reeves did not retract his paper. Independent researchers who examined both radar datasets noted that the two surveys had used different equipment, different methodologies, and different frequency ranges, meaning they were not technically testing the same thing. Ground-penetrating radar at different frequencies reads different depths and different material densities. Some researchers argued that the conflicting results did not cancel each other out so much as they failed to overlap cleanly, which is a very different kind of result. A third analysis, conducted by an Italian team in 2018 using more advanced equipment, was also inconclusive, though the team noted specific zones of subsurface irregularity that they described as not definitively explained. 3 surveys. Conflicting readings. A mystery that the official record says is resolved but that the physical evidence refuses to confirm. The door, metaphorically and possibly literally, remains. To understand what might be at stake if Reeves' hypothesis is correct, you have to understand who Nefertiti was. Not the bust. Not the iconic image. The actual political figure. Nefertiti was not simply the wife of Akhenaten. During his reign, a period of radical religious transformation in which Egypt's entire polytheistic tradition was dismantled in favor of a single sun deity, the Aten, she appears in monuments alongside her husband with a frequency and authority that suggests co-regency rather than mere consort status. She is depicted smiting enemies. She is shown wearing the double crown. Some interpretations of later inscriptions suggest she ruled Egypt under a male name, Nefertiti, after Akhenaten's death, which would make her for a period the pharaoh of Egypt itself. And then she disappears. No death record. No burial record. No confirmed tomb. The most powerful woman of the ancient world, and possibly one of its most powerful rulers, vanishes from the written record without explanation. 3 explanatory frameworks have emerged around this disappearance. The first is the simplest. She died and was buried, but the records were later erased as part of the systematic campaign to expunge Akhenaten's entire religious revolution from Egyptian history. Under subsequent pharaohs, particularly Horemheb, enormous efforts were made to destroy or repurpose evidence of the Aten period. Nefertiti's burial, under this model, may simply be a casualty of political erasure. The second framework argues that Nefertiti did indeed rule as pharaoh after Akhenaten, and that her burial, to protect it from destruction, was deliberately hidden within an existing tomb, resealed behind a decorated wall, placed somewhere that was already safe and already sealed. Tutankhamun's tomb, in this reading, was not a separate act of burial but a protective architecture built around something older. The third framework, more contested but not without its proponents, is that what lies behind the north wall is not Nefertiti at all, but evidence of a different kind of concealment, royal materials, religious objects, or texts from the Aten period that were too sacred or too politically dangerous to destroy outright and were hidden rather than eliminated. Not buried with a queen. Hidden by a state. In 2022 and 2023, a series of new studies using updated photogrammetric mapping, essentially the creation of extremely precise three-dimensional digital models of the tomb's interior surface, were conducted by teams with access to the site. Some of these studies reported anomalies in wall density readings consistent with Reeves' original observations. Others found nothing unusual. The Egyptian authorities have not granted permission for any invasive investigation of the north wall. No drilling. No endoscopic camera insertion. No physical sampling of the plaster. The official reason given is the preservation of the site's integrity, a legitimate and important concern. Non-invasive methods remain the only permitted approach. But critics of that position note that non-invasive methods with current technology cannot resolve the ambiguity. The only way to know with certainty what lies behind the north wall is to look. And looking in any form that would produce a definitive answer has not been authorized. The wall stands. The question stands with it. Stand in that space for a moment. Not as a tourist. Not as a researcher with equipment. Just imagine the physical reality of it. You are at the bottom of a stone staircase cut into the bedrock of the Valley of the Kings. The air is dry in a way that has no equivalent anywhere in the modern world. Dry and stilled across more than 3,000 years. The paintings on the walls around you are still vivid, preserved in the sealed dark for millennia. Figures in blue and gold, hieroglyphs describing passage, transformation, the night journey of the soul through the underworld. The floor is pale limestone dust. The ceiling is low and close. And in front of you on the north wall, is a painting of 12 baboons. The hours of the night. A ritual image, precise and deliberate, covering a surface that 2 radar teams have read differently and a third has called irregular. You cannot see anything wrong with it. That is the point. The Egyptians who sealed this room, whoever they were, whatever they were protecting, were not careless. They were working within a tradition that understood concealment as an art form. The most important things were never left visible. They were layered, encoded, covered, protected. Not hidden from history exactly. Hidden within it. Whatever is behind that wall is still there. There is a final detail that tends to be underreported in mainstream coverage of this story. When Howard Carter first opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, a discovery now over a century old, he noted in his private journals that the burial appeared rushed. Incomplete. The objects inside were extraordinary, but their arrangement suggested haste. Some items were damaged as if moved quickly. Some were stored in ways that seemed temporary rather than ceremonial. Carter himself wrote that the tomb's layout felt, in places, improvised. He attributed this to the chaos of Tutankhamun's unexpected early death. But Reeves' hypothesis raises a different reading of the same evidence. If Tutankhamun was buried in a space that was not originally built for him, if the outer chambers were adapted rapidly for a young king who died before a proper tomb could be completed, then the rushed quality Carter observed may not be evidence of grief and haste alone. It may be evidence of something being worked around. A presence that was already there. Already sealed. A room within a room. A burial protecting another burial. Not a mistake. A decision. What the story of Nefertiti, and the North Wall, ultimately reveals is something larger than one missing queen. It is a window into how history conceals itself. Not always through destruction. Not always through deliberate cover-up in the modern conspiratorial sense. But through layers. Through decisions made in moments of political urgency that become invisible over centuries. Through the simple fact that what is buried deeply enough, sealed carefully enough, and covered with something beautiful enough, tends to remain buried until the right kind of looking is finally possible. And even then, even when the right kind of looking arrives, what it finds is not always clarity. Sometimes it finds more wall. More ambiguity. More questions where there should be answers. The Egyptian state, the Egyptological community, and the technology available to us right now are all in genuine dispute about what exists inside one of the most studied rooms in human history. A room that has been photographed, mapped, scanned, and analyzed continuously since 1922. And we still do not know what is in it. That is not a failure of science. It is a testament to what the ancient world was capable of, not just building extraordinary things but hiding them from everyone who came after. Nefertiti's face stares out from museum cases on every continent. She is one of the most recognized figures from antiquity. Her likeness has been studied, reproduced, and debated for over 100 years. And yet the woman herself, where she was buried, what happened to her body, what was placed with her when she died, what was written on the walls of her tomb, remains entirely unknown. A face without a grave. A life without a resting place. If the North Wall is ever opened, what is found there will change one of the most fundamental gaps in ancient history. If it reveals Nefertiti, her mummy, her burial goods, her name confirmed in the cartouche above the door, it will answer questions that have remained open since the discovery of her husband's reign over a century ago. And if it reveals something else? Something the 3,000 years between her death and this moment have not given us the context to interpret? That would raise questions no one is currently prepared to answer. The wall is still sealed. The scans remain disputed. The permission to look further has not been granted. And somewhere beneath 3,000 years of silence and stone and painted baboons marking the hours of the night, something waits. Whether it is Nefertiti or her secrets or something the ancient world chose deliberately to bury, it waits. And the room stays closed. If you want to keep following the investigations the official record tends to leave incomplete, the sites that stay sealed, the discoveries that raise more questions than they answer, subscribe. There is more beneath the surface than the accepted version of history has ever been willing to say out loud.